I'll get this out of the way immediately. This game is fucking weird and insane. Welcome everyone, welcome. Recently I just finished playing the very popular game Mouthwashing, and I gotta say, going in blind is fucking insanity. This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any fucking sense. I personally wasn't very interested in the game without delving deep into what actually happens, but my friend Chloe was a fucking fanatic for it. So in her madness of obsession, she gifted me it on Steam, and so I felt obligated to play it myself, and I made sure to record it as well because anyone who gives me such a generous gift deserves to be repaid, and this video is my way of returning the favor. Make sure to stick around because at the end of the video I'll have her join me as well in the call to discuss bits of lore that I didn't fucking understand, or what certain hallucinations really meant. I'll stop yapping now and let's begin the game together. Make sure to like and subscribe the video, please. To start, we have 5 different people on board our spaceship. Curry, our captain, Anya, the nurse, Swansea, the mechanic, Daisuke, Swansea's assistant, and lastly Jimmy, our main character for most of the game, who's the co-pilot. Beginning the game, we're controlling the spaceship, and from what I can tell, we intentionally choose to crash into a nearby asteroid. And just when I think the place we're at is going to start exploding, the game decides to show us early on just how fucking crazy it can get. The hallways twist and turn, and we don't even know where we're going until things get even crazier when the mascot on the posters on the walls start appearing in front of us, blocking our paths and making us confused. Until... Why is there a baby crying? Uh-oh, I'm gonna turn around, there's gonna be something scary, isn't there? Never tell me I was wrong. We're in the lounge after a flash of light with the entire crew discussing entering the cargo hold that they were shipping. It's decided that we'll be the new captain to guide us out of our situation and to make sure we survive long enough until we get rescued. Going downstairs, Swansea is blocking anyone from entering the utility room, mentioning it being full of the emergency foam and that anyone without proper safety can cause the entire ship to break open. Looping around the entire ship, we make it to the medical ward and we get to see our former Captain Curry lying on the bed looking better than ever. Unfortunately for us, Anya is too squeamish to give the captain his painkillers, so we gotta do it for her. Hold still. I don't like this any more than you do. You know what they say, pain is how we know we're still living. We head down to the cockpit and find the scanner immediately, so we go to the cargo bay to open it up and find out if we can salvage any supplies we were hauling. Alright, we're here. Let's see what's inside. The moment we open the cargo and see our gigantic space, we cut to the past in the perspective of Captain Curly. Whoa, what the okay, that's a weird way of transitioning. And he just finished a psyche evaluation with Anya. She's dreading having to go do Jimmy's due to his unique behavior. I have found myself sexually excited at the sight of Jimmy, what the fuck? And so Captain Curly decides to do it for her. Headed downstairs in the utility room, we meet Swansea and Daisuke having some minor issues with the ventilation shaft. So using our scanner, we retrieve an axe to free Daisuke from the phone. After that minor and totally unrelated to the future task, we talk to Jimmy, who's been enjoying the show, and tell him we're gonna perform his psyche evaluation. Going to the cockpit is very easy and nothing bad happened whatsoever. This isn't normal. I don't think he passed the psychiatric test very well. None of this is right! Well, off the deep end. Okay, this is officially fucked up. What the hell? Emergency warning. Oh no. What's going on? Is this what he saw during the fucking crash? Did he even know what he was doing? What kind of captain is this? How did he even pass the psychiatric test? What is up with ladders? Why are there so many fucking ladders? Why ladders? What is this? The sun? Oh no. Fuck it. Go into the sun. We're gonna go in there. A pure white room with a single exit. Obviously, it means that's where to go. Well, no better thing to do than to go inside, right? See, we made it to the cockpit without any troubles. We start his evaluation and he seems a bit hesitant to do it in the first place. I wonder why. The evaluation ends quickly and Jimmy and Curly start talking about themselves to each other. Jimmy points out how Curly's behavior seems off. Curly is unsure if he's fine with his current position at his job. He's at the highest he can be in his corporate ladder, being the full-fledged captain of a crew, and yet he doesn't know if this is what he even wants. Should he try to do something else even if he's bad at it? Is being a freighter captain all he wants to be? A message has come in, but before we can even get to read it, we go back to the present. Or rather a hallucination of the present. In the middle of this large and empty warehouse, we see a light, and it's a TV that has several different channels playing different things. And finally, we get to the right channel, that being Mouthwash. The crew are shocked to see that this year-long trip is all for hauling a mountain of nothing but mouthwash. Anya mentions that the sugar content prevents it from being used as any kind of disinfectant, and Swansea snatches the bottle from her, saying that the bottle is 14% ethanol and enjoys a nice drink, breaking 15 years of sobriety. 6 days before the crash. The crew decide to throw a surprise birthday party for us, given that they can only have one communal party per trip, and unfortunately, the captain's duty stretches as far as making the cake. After making a nice futuristic cake, and everyone gets ready to enjoy their time, Jimmy can't help but notice Curly has something on his mind. We don't get to directly hear what the message was, but the company is doomed, and this will be their final delivery, and everyone is understandably upset. Jimmy, unlike everyone else, is more furious and vocal about the issue to Curly than anything, almost blaming him for it all. He points out that this medical job is the only one Anya could get because she's not good enough to be a proper nurse. Swansea is old and probably doesn't have much time left to keep working, and that Daisuke, being recommended by his parents, will probably bounce back the easiest, being able to rely on them again. He's resentful to Captain Curly being very aggressive, still claiming he's just trying to save his own skin and get rid of everyone else without dealing with the consequences. 3 months after the crash. We wake to Curly making noise and Daisuke sleeping still, and decide to look for our nurse. In the cockpit, Anya and Swansea are discussing something until we interrupt the two. Anya confirms Curly hasn't had his painkillers yet, and though she insists she can handle it this time, we tell her we're doing it. Swansea seems attached to his axe. Seems a bit unsafe. We get upstairs and Jimmy is getting angry at the pressure of being in charge of everybody, and force feeds the pills down Curly's throat. What the fuck? We transition once again, but this isn't a flashback, nor is it to go back to the present, but rather seems like a look at the future. The entire lounge area is completely ruined. Screen broken, mouthwash bottles everywhere, and most bizarre of all, Curly is sitting right in front of us. After discussing about eating mediocre cake and that sometimes the bad stuff is what makes the good moments good, we get up to find a knife to cut the cake. Traveling through the broken and empty spaceship, there's piles and piles of mouthwash all over the place, being just as prominent as the foam protecting the ship. We get to the cockpit and in there we see there's not even foam inside it anymore. It's all just mouthwash. We grab an axe that's sitting sunk into the co-pilot seat with blood, and our new objective is to feast. We enter the lounge. The giant shattered screen now displays an eye constantly glaring at us. Curly is laying down on the table, and there's only one way this can end. Four months after the crash. The cargo hold is a complete mess and we're tasked to check on our crew. Swansea is drinking the mouthwash all the time and is a complete drunk dancing mess when we see him, with an axe in hand as well, making it seem dangerous. Spooking Anya, we talk and she mentions that not all the medicine in the ship was in the medical ward, but that some in the locker beside it. However, it's covered in foam and if we hit the foam one too many times in a bad spot, the entire ship is doomed. But first things first, we need to get the axe to chop up the foam. We talk to Swansea and he's still as drunk as ever. We ask for the axe, claiming that we're the only one actually doing something to help out on the ship, and before giving it to us, slams it into the screens, shattering it into what we saw in the future. Swansea, no! Downstairs, we see Daisuke laying on the floor, clearly not handling the mouthwash as well as someone else, and we take it from him. Anya asks if we can give Curly the medication, and Jimmy completely snaps. He goes on a rant about all of his responsibilities, the tasks he's done, the shoes he's had to fill in, and that he's the only one on the ship ever fixing things, and that he's alone when it comes to helping everyone out. Before feeding Curly his pills, he apologizes to him that he was sorry that he never understood the pressure of being captain before to him, and that he'll make sure that Curly makes it out of this. 6 hours until judgment, and we're currently in a fast panic, with Swansea yelling at us with anger and intent to kill. We barely blockade the door in time until he shatters the window, axe in hand, until we transition yet again. 2 days before the crash. Anya and Captain Curly are talking one-on-one. She points out that the nighttime screen has a dead pixel that Curry can't see, and that Curry can't see it because of the bigger picture. Anya asks Curly why the ship has locks on the cockpit and the medical room door, but not in the sleeping quarter, to which Curly responds, safety. 5 months after the crash. Before we can take a proper look at how messy everything's become, Daisuke comes to us panicking that Anya is stuck in the medical room, and we follow and we can't open the door, but it turns out that the door isn't broken, but rather she's locked herself inside. Jimmy once again undermines everything everyone is going through besides his own hardships, and after being cryptic with her words that what she's gonna do is the best thing she's ever done, we ask Daisuke if there's any other way inside the room. He tells us that a secret entrance to the room is from the ventilation shaft, but it's both off limits for safety and off limits because no one is allowed in the utility room but Swansea. We meet Swansea and he tells us instantly that no one at all will be allowed in that room, but as soon as the conversation ends, we flash forward to the future. Daisuke is bleeding on the floor, hurt to hell, and Swansea is next to us, telling us we need infectant, and that we should have some still, but Jimmy is muttering about a cocktail, something we don't know yet, and says he can fix this, and tries to blame Swansea, that it's his fault instead for not cooperating at first. Before we can even get another word out, he cuts us off, telling us to find something else to use fast. When we enter the medical room, a chunk of the left side is completely glitched and impossible to see, preventing us from seeing Curly's condition, as if tuning out whatever is in there. The vent inside the room has blood on its outside, and it seems as though Daisuke made it through the vent, but it didn't go well. The cargo hold is blocked by a tombstone, and when we scan it, it vanishes and we can go inside. And it seems our scanner is showing us just how much hidden blood there is, and we descend a giant staircase. Our sanity is slipping when, after a flash telling us to take responsibility, the environment has completely warped and we don't even know what's real anymore. After another flash, we're in the middle of the cargo hold where thousands of boxes of nothing but mouthwash rest, and we get a note telling us, "A blind beast, aimless and restless. You can't run from it." After a lot of trial and error, I found out that this is a chase sequence, and the note is the hint that you gotta be quiet when you make movement, otherwise the beast will get you. The beast is invisible and runs aimlessly throughout the entire area, but you'll know where it is when you feel the ground shaking too much and the screen showing static towards the direction it's coming from. While the beast is invisible, it's only able to be partially seen when it's close by with the scanner pointed at it. After navigating past it, we see our Polly mascot holding up none other than Mouthwash. We snap back to reality after grabbing it. The only way to progress is to use the Mouthwash. We open it up, and he apologizes for messing up, and we apply it. Five months after the crash. We return back when we need to break into the medic room and to save, quote unquote, Curly. We need to knock out Swansea to get the key to access the room. The plan is to make a cocktail, but with ingredients strong enough to knock even Swansea out. We mix together our isopropyl alcohol with mouthwashing at the mixing station to create an alcohol strong enough to knock even Swansea out. To finish it, we need sweetener, and Daisuke lets us know that he mistakenly may have misplaced a few packets on accident at the beginning of the trip. Grabbing a sweetener bag out of his bed and combining it with our disgusting alcohol, we make something potent enough to knock Swansea out in seconds. Having second thoughts about this plan, Jimmy just tells Daisuke that the others are depending on us. Entering the room, we're shocked to see that the room is barely present with foam, and there's even a singular working cryostasis pod intact. And Daisuke applauds Swansea's work, but Jimmy accuses Swansea of lying that the room never had any foam in it at all, and that he was saving the pod for himself when everyone else would just die, calling him hypocritical for his words, claiming that he was going to go out with the best time of his life. The vent is intact, but we can see some live wires poking out of it, and when questioning the safety and legitimacy of the plan, Jimmy grooms him into the idea that he's gonna save everyone and Swansea will finally be proud of him if he does it. Captain's orders. He climbs inside, everything looks good, but suddenly the lights go out and we hear him screaming in pain. He climbs further and is in shock that Anya did something, and something bad. One day before the crash. We're searching for a gun now. Entering the cockpit, we see Anya on the floor visibly distraught, and we try to comfort her because as the nurse, she herself had never had to take psyche evaluations. But she tells us she hid the gun case, saying that she knew she couldn't get the gun itself, and before we can properly ask about the gun's location, she reveals to us she got pregnant. She didn't say it specifically, but Jimmy had assaulted her, and as a result, Anya is pregnant. She then tells us that if she couldn't have the gun to protect herself, she would hide it to make sure that Jimmy would never be able to take it. 6 hours until judgment. Pouring mouthwash on Daisuke's wound was the worst thing we could have done, and all we did was infect his wounds. Earlier, Anya mentioned that the sugar level was too high for it to be used as a disinfectant, and all Jimmy did was cause him to suffer more. Swansea gets on his knees and readies his axe. He tells Daisuke that he thought he was just an annoying kid who wasn't too great at anything, and his eagerness made him a useless ray of sunshine. Swansea laments that he was just a good kid with ambition, wanting to do good for everybody. He tells Daisuke to close his eyes. Monster. I could have fixed him, Swansea. I have to do everything myself. Why can't any of you just give me some time to fucking think? Jimmy calls Swansea a monster for what he did, and that everyone is getting in his way all the fucking time, and that he could have fixed things. Swansea tells him that his delusions end now, and that he wasn't gonna let Daisuke suffer because of Jimmy's self-centered delusions of being able to fix everything. Jimmy claims he was hiding the utility room from everyone and the pod to use for himself, and that he was manipulating Anya to telling her things that he wanted her to hear. Swansea reveals he didn't tell Anya anything, but rather she told him about Jimmy and the things he's done. Swansea has no interest in survival anymore, and Jimmy, realizing the situation is out of his control, he needs to grab the gun. When we enter the medical room, we finally get to see Anya, and unfortunately, she overdosed and chose to commit suicide in the room. All the while, Curly can just sit in bed and watch. We put the combination in the box and retrieve the gun, and when we do, Curly just laughs. Opening the door, we're shocked to see Swansea charging at us with the axe. 0 days before the crash. We see Anya on her knees where she hid the gun. She told Jimmy that she's pregnant, and he didn't say a word but walked off. Curly says he can fix this and goes to Jimmy and they talk. Curly just wants to fix this mess and be done with it, But Jimmy refuses to accept things, claiming that once this trip is over, what's going to be left for us? Absolutely nothing, and that Curly is at his wit's end with the responsibility he has over this complex situation. Jimmy says he'll take care of it. Oh no, 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 no. Jim, tell me you didn't. I didn't. What the fuck did you do? He crashed us? One hour before judgment. Looks like Jimmy crashed us all on purpose and blamed the entire thing on Curry, and everyone believed him. Now we're carrying Curry, and at the table, we're having another party. The delusions are getting even worse, and every corpse at the table is even specifically calling him Captain, the role he wanted so badly. It's time to cut the cake. Jimmy's speech directed to Curly has him talking to him as if it's all still his fault, and that someone of the lowest rank in his ladder is still higher than anyone else in the crew, and that life isn't even worth living at their placements. But he forgives him, and that no matter what, until the very end, he will make sure Curly survives. Take responsibility. Our delusions just get worse and worse. The medical room is completely turned upside down, and the vent is wide open ready for us, and we leap inside. There's so many things inside the vent, they go on endlessly. The delusions of Jimmy keep expanding, and there's no end to it until we reach a vent that has a note on it stating no turning back now. When turning around, a bloody mess will engulf your screen, and at its max it resembles a face almost. The only way to get past this segment is to turn your back on the situation. I'm not confident on what the meaning of this scene is, but it's worth noting that most of the visuals are related to Daisuke, whether it be physically or items that are related to him. More and more the delusions pass as our sanity degrades completely before we're back in the medical room in a twisted form yet again with axes covering the wall. Entering this vent again, we're crawling on the floor in a way that's similar to how it must have been for Daisuke, as he must have entered the vents before, and we're continuing down this path until we enter the utility room where we're face to face with Swansea, who's bound to a chair, and we have a gun sitting right in there in front of us for his to use. What? Whoa! After shooting, we're thrust into a completely new area. We're at a graveyard now, and going in further, we see it's a grave for Daisuke in the center, and we're being chased by Swansea with his axe. During this sort of fight between the two, you'll need to land 3 shots on him before the fight can complete, and the final shot rings with a bell and a flash of light. I have something to say, so shut the fuck up and listen. I spent 13 years half cut up to my eyeballs. Drunk, to put it mildly. Then suddenly I saw it, a street light shining in my face. 500 gigawatts of the power of God. A vision of my bloated body found in some ditch scared me straight. So I got a collar shirt, mortgage, and a credit card. All the things that make him a good man. I hoped I could raise my children to be better than their old man. I wanted to believe I was never one setback away from my worst self. But the truth is, discipline, drive, routine, the endless fucking desperation to get shit done, a loving wife, great kids, sobriety? I'm telling you, accomplishments I'd been chasing all my life, never felt as good as I expected when I crossed the finish line. So now that we're at the end, taking inventory, those nights spinning out of my head, sinking into the sofa, broken glass in my palms, bleeding dry the funniest thing ever, old dogs laughing and snarling on a waterbed floor, mocking the moon for daring to show its face. All nausea and wreckage and vomit and ugly cruelty. The only problem in the world? An empty bottle. Those were the best days of my life. Yeah. Those were the best days of my life. I got nothing to hide. Ready to face the music. I can see myself for what I am. But you? A cowardly, selfish motherfucker, and you can't even see it. I should have been able to protect the kid. If I could have done one thing right, I wish it had been to give him one small chance off this goddamn rock. Swansea, I'm gonna fix everything. We're gonna make it. Fuck you. Take responsibility. Swansea is dead and bound to a chair after we've shot him. He let us know that his past, and that despite years of hard effort to fix his fucked up life, the days of being a drunk were still the best of his life. He's able to admit his faults and calls out Jimmy for being so delusional and unable to see his own issues as well. We exit the room and the hallways feel endless and only further proves just how little sanity we have left. Looks like we really did tie him up and kill him. Or maybe we're just hallucinating still like a fucking madman. Hello, Captain. We loop endlessly in a small hallway. It gets more and more distorted with eyeballs until the walls and everything else are just eyes until... Continuing forward, we keep running until we see an exit. We are inside the mouth of a giant face of Captain Curly, with no eye in an empty void of a room. Continuing further, Curly is in front of a TV and has several different valves attached to his body and screens showing the inside of his body as well. Clicking the valves will forcibly rotate different parts of his body and make him groan in pain. The TV tells us to use Curly's leg, and when selecting it, the description only says, "Someday he'll thank me," and so we feed it to him. The process repeats with trial and error, throwing it up each time with failure until we can get it to stay down. For whatever this scene could represent, my best guess is the process of Jimmy creating an idea of how it was to force feed Curly his own leg meat, rejecting it time and time again, but Jimmy keeps force feeding it for his own good until he eventually succeeds. The TV flashes help me, and when we get closer, we see ourselves in the midst of space alone, walking aimlessly. We walk until we see a burning Curly sitting on a chair, and the two talk. I want to go home. We are home. Why don't you finish what you started? Don't worry, if anyone ever finds us, I'll still be playing the villain. You'll be the better man in the end like you wanted. I could have stopped it. I'm taking responsibility. You've never taken responsibility in your own fucking life. No, we can both be heroes. We're a team, just you and me, like we used to be. What happened was an accident. We were trapped. I made a mistake, alright? I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Curly. Curly accepts responsibility, that he's to blame for letting things get out of control the way they did, that Jimmy should just let him die, and he'll still be the villain that Jimmy made him out to be. Take responsibility. We're back inside the vents, and this time we pick up an ultrasound to examine a giant ball of flesh. The goal is to find 3 different horse bodies inside of this, and each time we find one and examine it, one of the lines on the ball of flesh opens up, and once all are found, we see a giant face. A giant centipede-like monster appears outside of it. What the fuck was that? and we're placed into another chase sequence. Getting close, we can see that the centipede is composed of hundreds of poly horses merged together, and they scream like a baby and run out of sight. Running through here, whoa! Oh, I jumped. Oh, I fucking jumped. Okay. The way I beat this section is by choosing to ignore them, by looking away from wherever it was coming from, and when it does get you, it looks at you for a moment, just a moment, before it continues charging. The chase ends when we're thrust into a dark corridor, and the farther we walk, the more the walls are covered in the name tags for every member of the crew until it's all we can see, and we run more and more until we head up a set of stairs, and dozens of empty bottles of mouthwash come dropping down to us, and we reach the top. It's the cargo hold, and sitting atop a mountain of empty mouthwash is a Polly statue. There you are. Wait, what the fuck? We talk to the statue. It's pure insanity and delusion that we can even talk to the statue, and it mocks us and our situation. Shut up. Curly tried his best, I did too, but he's the better man. I see that now. We can both still make it. I'll take care of him. I'm taking responsibility. Curly. Captain. I'm so sorry. Yes, I do. I fucked up. But I can still make this right. Our worst moments don't make us. If we really meant the words we said, we wouldn't still be so obsessed with playing the hero for Curly. 0 hours before judgment. We pick up Curly from the party table and walk down an endless hallway. Our new task? Go home. The door at the end of the hallway opens up and we're in the utility room. Let's go. We place Curly inside the pod, and we see from Curly's perspective, Jimmy tells us it's all gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. You always had my back. I ended up hurting you even though I was trying to save us. But now you'll survive. It's like you said, together we can fix anything. I'm just proud I got to be your friend and co-pilot, Captain. And that he was glad to have been our friend. In a disgusting twist of the knife that stays in character with Jimmy, I fixed it. After saying we fixed it, he says, I fixed it, and walks away to kill himself. The cryopod freezing begins, and our game ends. The captain never went down with the ship, or in Jimmy's delusion of him being the new captain of the Tulpar, his suicide was his way of going down with the ship. Who knows what'll happen to Curly? He may be saved, he may get to fully recover, or he'll wake up alone in 20 years and die a truly lonesome death. That's mouthwashing. That was a lot of sick and twisted space bullshit and delusions. But don't worry, for some of the biggest questions I've brought my friend Chloe here, who gifted me the game in the first place, to answer some of the most important questions we face in this grand adventure.
Hello. So, there's a few details in Mouthwashing that you might have missed. For one, Anya hinted at Jimmy's atrocities before it was fully revealed in game, even though that too was indirect. In one of the flashback scenes before the crash, Anya's speaking with Curly in the lounge in front of the large screen. It's during this scene that she asks Curly why there is a lock on the medical bay and not on the sleeping quarters. Curly replies, saying that it's for the same reason that there's a lock on the cockpit: safety. After Curly says this, the word safety flashes across the screen, proving the clear implication that Jimmy was fully able to get into the sleeping quarters to Anya, dismantling the notion of safety. Also, Anya asks how long it will be until the crew reaches their destination. The answer to this is 8 months. This is relevant because when we consider that a pregnancy generally lasts around 9 months, she may have to give birth on the ship if she had been pregnant for a long enough period of time. Anya's general demeanor around Jimmy hints at her fear of him and her attempts not to provoke him, as she generally seems uncomfortable and stutters around him. Eventually, the bombshell is dropped on the player while playing as Curly. Prior to the crash, we enter the cockpit, trying to find the gun, to see Anya on the floor sobbing. We confront her and ask what's wrong, and this is where she reveals that she's pregnant. At the very beginning of the game, you can hear babies crying as you run out of the cockpit and around the ship aimlessly as Jimmy. She also complains about feeling nauseated frequently, and states that she believes our worst moments don't make us monsters, alluding to Jimmy's abuse. My second point is that Curly is a morally gray character. Curly is generally loved by his crew and takes care of them, tries to run his ship efficiently, but when he's incapacitated, the player feels for him, wishing him to recover, but he has character flaws that can't be ignored. The earliest one in this game is the prolonging of breaking the news of the Pony Express being shut down to the crew because his superiors wanted him to wait until they completed the delivery. The more severe one, though, is his apparent ignoring of Anya's calls for help and grace towards Jimmy. As I stated earlier, Anya implies in the cockpit scene that she had attempted to tell Curly earlier about her abuse, but he ignored it. When she does tell him, he's insistent on trying to gently correct Jimmy because he has been friends with him for a long time. He never shows true hatred toward Jimmy for his crimes. Some may argue that it may have been difficult to punish Jimmy while they were on the ship, but I feel there were ways to at least keep him away from Anya that Curly as captain failed to do. Swansea
Let me just interrupt.
Okay.
Okay. Do you think Curly's a little bitch?
Yes. I do. Third point. Swansea's sacrifice. After the crash, Swansea is insistent towards the crew that the utility room is off limits because it's completely filled with foam, and any attempt to access it without extreme care may breach the foam's protection from the void of space outside. However, when we, as Jimmy, and Daisuke entered the room after knocking Swansea out with a makeshift margarita, we can see that it is not filled completely with foam. Rather, most of the room is free. However, all the cryopods that may guarantee the crew the chance at life, should the rescue crew not find them, are covered with foam and non-functional, except for one. Jimmy immediately jumps to claim, and tell Daisuke, that Swansea had saved this pod for himself. However, later, when poor Daisuke was severely injured and dying, leading Swansea to put him out of his misery, Swansea speaks of Daisuke in an unexpected manner. He states that Daisuke was a good kid and that, quote, an old man could stand to learn from someone like him. He goes on to say that Daisuke deserved a second chance. This speech implies not only that Swansea truly cared for Daisuke the whole time, despite treating him with some level of grumpy malice, but also that he saved the cryopod for Daisuke, hence the second chance that he wished to give to him.
I pronounce it Daisuke.
And point 4, there's a ton of foreshadowing in the game. To name a few instances, Swansea tells Daisuke early in the game when he tries to go into the vent, quote, "You looking to get impaled, electrocuted, and cooked?" This alludes to Daisuke's fate at the end of the game, where he's impaled, electrocuted, and cooked. Next point. The breaking of the sun on the large screen with an axe. That's a reference to Daisuke being called a ray of sunshine, Swansea calling him that, and then, you know. Point 5, there's excessive amounts of symbolism in mouthwashing. One instance is the idea of the ladder in relation to Curly. Curly has reached the top of the ladder that is Pony Express, but now wishes to change routes entirely to something new. This breeds jealousy in Jimmy as he wishes to have that level of success to be able to consider that kind of change. Another example of symbolism is when Anya points out the dead pixel in the corner of the screen, which Curly is unable to see. This represents Anya's suffering and Curly's failure to notice it entirely. And that's it.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask you one off the record.
Okay.
Explain the giant chase with the centipede horse in the vent at the end of the game.
I'd say that's probably meant to be symbolic of Jimmy trying to avoid his guilt and responsibility, but it's chasing after him. The same idea with that being invisible and with Polly being visible in the box chase scene where you're trying to get the mouthwash.
Now, I don't know if that's how if what I'm about to say is actually how it works, but the way I was able to beat it is just by completely avoiding eye contact with it. Like if it was on my left, I would obviously avoid looking left. So is that another form of symbolism, or is that something that just that just happened when I played?
I actually didn't know that that's how that worked. When I played, I just avoided it in general and went to the opposite of where I heard it. But that's really interesting, and if that is the case, I'd say, yeah, it probably is, because he's trying to avoid looking his responsibility in the eyes.
Any final points you want to make?
I'd really suggest playing it. It's really interesting. It has a lot of plot twists, a lot of interesting points in it, a lot of cool gameplay. And that's it.
Alright. Now for any actual final closing statements.
Oh my god. I really like it. Very cool game. 10 out of 10.
Alright. Alright, well that's it then, huh? Give yourself an outro.
Sigmas on the wall. Can you goon them all?
I'm gonna fucking kill you. Hopefully most of these answers are good enough to satisfy most of your questions and curiosity eating up at you. But the best way to experience this game is to just go and buy it on Steam and play it for yourself. And come up with your own answers and see whatever I missed myself. With nothing more to talk about, I hope you all enjoyed. And if you made it this far into the video and enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and comment to let me know you made it this far in the first place. Based on how well this video will do, I'll make more of these long form content reviews on games that I find. And with that, that's all I've got to say. See ya.